In the 1980s, in the secluded town of Majanang, Indonesia, countless cursed bodies lay on the ground. In the evening, a group of individuals carrying coffins emerges, but it is warned that if they encounter anyone, they will be mercilessly slaughtered. Zia, a girl from this village, resides in the city and spends her final days with her mother. However, after learning of his death, he regained consciousness. As soon as he set foot on village ground, an unknown curse was reawakened. But what? About the village's history, or the murderer who carried the coffin? This is the plot of Cromley, an Indonesian horror thriller film released today. In the 1980s, in East Java, Indonesia, there was a gang murder that did not occur. The gang was known as Sugali, which translates to a society of disobedient children. People have heard many negative things about them. It's said that some people are lazy. It is impossible to kill using bullets or sharp weapons. The most unexpected fact was that they all practiced black magic. In this homicide, one victim was slain by being tossed into a pit. Before his death, he cursed this village and declared that no one would be spared as long as his lineage lived. This atrocity occurred. It's been about 10 years since Zia was on her way to her country home with her close friend, Dika. In actuality, Zia's mother has perished. Zia discovers on the way that she is not permitted to visit this village, yet she persists in her journey to her village. It is also revealed that her father has been gone for 10 years. He hasn't been discovered yet. Today's weather is quite overcast. Furthermore, the birds are fluttering in the sky as if they are going to witness an unforeseen event. Zia and Dika arrive at their destination after a lengthy trek, but as soon as they set foot on village soil, lightning strikes. Zia's mother's burial has concluded. Seeing Zia, her granddad appears serious. His expression was filled with an unknown level of worry. Zia could tell by the look on her grandfather's face that he did not want to see her when he returned home. Danang informs him that I advised you not to come to the village house, and who did you bring with you? Zia says, "What are you saying? My mother has died. Should I come?" Danang clearly informs him that the burying work has been completed, and that he can now return to the city. His grandfather's words are clear. He does not want Zia to stay here. Zia asks her grandfather, "Then don't you love me? Don't you want me to stay with you for a few days?" Danang responds he does, but the reason for not staying here is another story. There is an ancient curse in this village. Furthermore, everyone here, according to Danang's assistant, rose and assembled everyone in the village, informing them that an accident had occurred. He stated that Ida's daughter had entered the village. You are all aware of your responsibilities, and you have undoubtedly informed your children about the situation. However, I will tell you all again tonight. This was a mistake. Nobody will come out of the house. The villagers inquire, "How will I pray?" He responds, "One day, if I pray at home, no Mahabharata will become impure. I will do as I have told you, and if they come in front by mistake, I will not be able to look at them, but there." The village police are hesitant to accept these words, because they must guard at night. But panic has already set in among the villagers. Zia is seated in her mother's clothing. The smell of the garments seemed to be comforting her, but then a rubber ball rolls down from above. When she gets up, she notices that the horse's chair is moving, and as soon as he stops, a peculiar sound comes from the tank behind them. He checked the tank and discovered that it was locked. Suddenly, his grandfather arrived and inquired why he hadn't packed his backpack yet. Zia inquired of his grandfather about what was within the tank. Danang claimed there was nothing inside. Dika now wonders why her grandfather is so determined to force her away from here. Zia informs her that they believe that if she stays here, her father will return. When Dika attempts to ask further questions about this, Zia silences him. Zia says quietly that her father is missing. He has misgivings about it. Furthermore, previous year, his mother was delighted to meet him. Perhaps his mother wanted to tell him something, but Zia was not as fortunate. The reason for this is that his grandfather never allowed him to visit here. His grandfather warned him that if he came here, he would face immense peril. He never came back here after that. However, Zia apologized to Dika for calling him to this location. Then it was nearly evening in the village. The weather is not ideal, with dark clouds in the sky and frequent lightning strikes. The tire of the automobile that Zia would be driving back to the city has been ruptured. Now the main issue is locating a mechanic in this isolated place. Danang is a little concerned. He warns the two of them in advance that if they call from behind, they will forget. Do not look, Zia advises. Is there any reason to do so much? We will only spend one night. Danang is quite serious. He says, I'm trying to save you. Danang goes out with Da to help. He says, look in that direction and see if anyone can help me. I gaze ahead to the settlement on the opposite side. The village is under police security. They believe there will be no issues, but today is entirely peaceful. They believe they will guard it for half an hour before going home. Zia is sitting at home alone in the thick of it all. He forgot his girlfriend was married and did not congratulate her. He contacted Meli and apologized for being unable to attend her wedding. However, he receives no assistance from others around him. It's far away, and there's nothing except the jungle. The atmosphere is a little cool. Besides, the weather is nice. The weather calls for a cigarette, so he sits down, takes the diary in his hand, lights it, and begins smoking. Today was a fantastic day because Zia was with him. He loves Zia in his heart, but he hasn't been able to express it because of fear. The weather is currently like this, and it may change after a bit. It will rain, and the peasants are also very afraid. As he turns the page of his diary, he notices a bizarre drawing, which he did not make. When the diary is gone from his eyes, 2 feet materialize as dark shadows. He is a little startled when he sees this, but after a while, he realizes it is an illusion of his eyes and becomes alarmed. Danang now addresses him as Sir, but the lights go out, and a troop of corpse-carrying persons causes fear across the community. With fog all around, the village police noticed this caravan and began shouting, "Don't go to this house. Why are you going?" The one next to it was called A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. He ran and looked around to see that no one was following him. The hellhound had already approached him in horror, screamed, and fled. Meli's mother also noticed them in a rush. When he arrives home, he conceals his daughter inside a cabinet and tells her she will not be able to go. Dia is afraid and comes to hide here. Zia approaches from the side of the car and asks what she is doing here. Without saying anything, he grabs Zia and leaves. Zia says, "Stop. I heard there is something in this village, and I saw it with my own eyes. I can't stay here for a moment longer." "Why did you see this now?" Dika tells him she saw a caravan carrying dead bodies, and she also knows they can't be human because they are all dead. She says, "I'm not joking. I really saw them. And why did you go to puncture the car tire? Now how are we going to get out of here?" In fact, Zia deliberately punctured the tire to stay here. The village constable, on the other hand, hurried after his friend John and told him, "You left me in danger. How could you come here? I'd heard about it for a long time, and now I have confirmation. This is how a friend in danger is detected. When John was going to ring the bell and warn the villagers, he noticed Boots pounding his own head. His entire head was covered in blood, and he appeared to be saying, "John, help me." He kept beating his head in this manner, and he died there. John was so afraid that his hands and feet stopped working. Suddenly, one of John's hands was severed, and he collapsed in front of Zia and Dika. Seeing this scene, the hair on each of their bodies rose up. An invisible force seized Dia by the throat, arrived to Da Nang, and fired a shot into the air, releasing Dia. Mila's mother, on the other hand, collapsed under the bed in terror, only to be dragged away by an invisible force. He threw her aside, grabbed her throat, and began floating her through the air. He cut open her stomach and extracted her entire female intestine. His daughter described the entire affair. He is hiding inside the cabinet and watches with horror. On the other hand, he remains mute. Da Nang, Zia, and Dika flee along the wooded trail. Someone grabs Daka's leg and pushes him toward a mirror near Da Nang. They can only see one mirror. When Dia is freed from her body, she leaves Da Nang and Zia. Zia begins running away with her grandfather. Dia tries to convince Zia that her grandfather is still alive. They have not been able to damage her. She knows how to get away from them. You don't have to worry about it, but they... The two are concerned about where they would spend the night. Zia knows that her buddy Miller's house is directly in front of them, and while walking, she finally arrives at their house. The home is totally dark. Mila begins to shout out several times after entering the house, but no one hears her. She's phoning their driver. However, she is unable to connect to the telephone. Zia glances up at the blood on the floor and gasps, only to discover Mila's mother's wounded body hanging there, wailing. When they discovered her, Mila screamed inside the cabinet and asked Zia what had happened. In answer, Mila stated that Cromley had also come. They were unable to find a way there. Dijana had to depart at night, regardless. Surprisingly, an automobile approached them at midnight through the deep woodland, beckoning. As soon as they cried out, they discovered it wasn't an automobile, but rather an illusion. Dekar felt like he had no legs. He began crying and making a cut, and they hauled the two of them away. He couldn't handle the excruciating pain of cutting his legs today. Abdida couldn't say anything to her, so he told Jia, "I love you." Her gut tore in an instant, as if a vein was being dragged out of it. Jia burst into tears after seeing this scene. Jia was emotionally impacted by the incident in an instant. He passes out and walks to the recipient's residence, inquiring where the protective gear is. Da Nang wanted to take the receiver with him, but his wife would never let him leave. It's a good thing. But when Da Nang requested protection from him, he was hesitant to provide it. On the other hand, a blind guy abducted and brought Zia and Meli. Zia wanted to scream, but her companion Dan silenced her. "I've been waiting for you for a long time." "I'm doing it, but today the wait is done." After a long period of stillness, the man spoke a word in Cromley. He claimed that all of the persons who perished tonight died as a result of this chromosome. On the other hand, Da Nang's tremendous pressure caused him to give up his locket, which served as a protective shield. Da Nang informs him that Jia's father has been revived again. He also accepts some salt-filled bullets from Prathar as protection. On the other hand, Andak presents himself to Jia as Yant. Jia wears a protective amulet around his neck, like his grandfather. Yant takes it from him and explains, "This protective shield has kept you alive for a long time. Zia asks him what has kept him alive. He asks her what has kept you alive. The true mystery of the story emerges from his father's curse. The story takes place in 1984, when a group known as Sugali was exterminated in East Japan, Indonesia. One of the tattooed terrorists was Zia's father, Jarat Yan, who continues to state it thoroughly. The incident occurred at a period when the Sugali gang was rapidly expanding and unstoppable. The reason for this was that some members of the Sugali gang were practicing black magic. One of them was Zia's father, Jarat, who had become eternal through the use of powerful dark magic. Who knew the true culprit was your own grandfather. From the start, he refused to accept your father as his daughter's son-in-law. Later, Danang joined the opposing side and gradually began to learn about him while residing with Jarat. One day, he apprehended him and murdered his father in his own grandfather's home, leaving him to die. He had cursed this hamlet before and became associated with Danang when his father was slain. At the time, he was there. Yanto explained that the amulet around his neck was constructed from his father's teeth, which was why he had survived for so long. However, the deceased Mesakari clan members wandered around the community as unhappy spirits, known as the Chromoleos. The Gorokramle are also known as people who dig up and carry corpses. If someone accidentally falls into their eyes, their own existence is jeopardized, which is why Yanto blindfolded his own eyes so he couldn't see them. Danang, on the other hand, had another knock on the door as he was leaving the house after speaking with her. The voice announced that Danang was about to open the gate. He opened the gate and looked outside, but there was nothing. The owner's wife was pointing to the elephant from behind him, attempting to demonstrate something. The herd carrying the dead was spotted heading towards the home ahead of them, the protection that had been safeguarding the family for so long. But when Danang removed it, the family relied on them. He grabbed his wife by the throat and began blasting her into the air. He took the bullets with him so he could assault them. When he went to collect them from the next room, he discovered his wife was no longer alive. He went out of terror and shut the gate. As soon as he turned around, he realized she was in front of him and became immobilized with panic. Her entire body, from her feet to her head, was torn in two. On the other hand, Danang was anxiously looking for Zia. When she got to the car, she noticed a dead person laying there. Meli regained consciousness and found herself chained up. Zia and Yantar managed to flee. The talk continued, and Yanta mentioned that your grandfather buried your father in two pieces, his head on one side and his body on the other. He also informed him how to get out of this. All he had to do was locate his skull and reattach it to his body, and your father would be revived in flesh and blood. There will only be one way to kill him, at the hands of his own partner. Your grandfather intends to end the curse through you, using a knife. If you stab your father with your own blood, he will die. Zia pledges to end the curse, but Ant refuses because he was a part of the Sugali gang. When people from their group were slaughtered, the entire hamlet stayed silent, and Yanta wanted the villagers to die in misery. When Yanta points the gun at Jiya, his grandfather arrives at the exact moment. They fight fiercely, and at one time, he is unhurt. When Danang rescues him, Jiya demands to know the entire tale from his grandfather, but Danang refuses to tell him. He responds, "Just trust me. I will tell you everything later." Zia refuses to listen and demands to know everything. Danang responds by telling him that his father was never good, that he practiced black magic and was a terrorist. After knowing the truth, your mother developed a strong dislike for him. He used to cause disturbances in the village. Second, your father was involved with a large terrorist organization. He approached the crowd, and I was under intense pressure to murder him. If I hadn't killed him, someone else would have done it. Zia was completely hesitant to hear these things. She said, "I know this much. My father loved me a lot when I was little. At least he loved his family. What right did he have to kill him?" No. In the middle of your chat, Zia pulls off her protective shield and assaults Zia at the same time. In the midst of the pandemonium, they discover no way to save her. And now is the time to revive Jared. He immediately runs to the garage room, where Jared's body has been dragged up. On the other side, they were approaching Zia, who was walking towards them. When they came closer, she wanted to check their coffin out of terror. When she went to check, she found her own body laying there. Suddenly, two unseen hands seized her throat, revealing a demon in the form of her father. When he catches him, he tells his father that he is Zia, but Dad does not recognize him at all. On the other hand, he retrieves the locked tank from the house, and it is discovered. This tank is not his own. Rather, part of Jarad's head is in place. He removes his teeth from the protective barrier and places them in his mouth. And then Yanto appears from behind and hits Danang in the neck, causing him to bleed. Jarad's soul eventually joins his physical body. When he enters, he is revived. When Yanta unties his rope, he is free and proceeds to beg Jarad for his life. However, when he wakes up, Rian sucks the fresh blood from his body and murders him before reaching Danang. What number of years have elapsed since then? I believe tonight will be a very sluggish night for you, because today is your day of punishment. The true narrative is that Jarad's group had several black magicians, but their leader practiced a technique that allowed him to become immortal. The opposition team was aware of the news. They somehow attained immortality, which led to a contract with Danang. Danang promised his daughter. He tells his son-in-law to continue practicing black magic and master it perfectly. But when Danang's daughter Ida learns this news, she turns her back on her husband, resulting in Jared coming out of all these incidents and living a normal life. But Danang, he believes he is acting the same as before, forcing him to beat him, but after beating him, he begins to regret it. But it is too late. Zia arrives, sees her father as a human being, and hugs him. Zia says, "It is reasonable to be furious with your grandfather, but you must forgive him." But Jared tells him otherwise. "You've taken on the characteristics of your mother. She also enjoyed forgiving others, but this forgiveness was unworthy." She pulls him away and goes to kill Danang. Despite much argument, her father does not agree with her, and she is eventually forced to. He murdered his father with his own hands, spilling his own blood on a knife and transporting Danang to the hospital due to significant bleeding. Although Danang can guess, he might not survive. Meli arrives with a song and says, "I heard everything that happened here, Gia. My mother died because of you. I will never let you live." Meli begins shooting at both of them, but Gia survived because of Danang, and the bullet struck him in the chest. In an attempt to save Zia, Danang attacked Meli with a knife and killed her right there. Zia's body was totally paralyzed. Perhaps he would die soon, but he did not want to die. At the appropriate time, he took the knife that had stabbed his father and tasted his blood. Xiao has also slumped here, and he is impossible to kill with a bullet or a sharp stick. The film's tale ends here. But in the post-credit sequence, we see that some mafia members arrive at the location of the accident last night, where the dead of Da Nang, Jarat, and 2 others were discovered. They take Jared's body to test. This is where it becomes evident that there will undoubtedly be a sequel to this film, as it currently lacks one. The riddle has not been fully revealed. Who was actually responsible for Zia's father's death? He was unable to tell Da Nang about the incident. Even though he tried, the true incident is still secret.